Greetings, everyone. This is Chief Yuya, and I'm here to bring you a very important announcement for all of you Blog Talk Radio listeners, especially those of you who enjoy dialing in live and communicating with the Anu family via this medium. As of December 1st, the call-in number will be changing. Due to changes at Blog Talk Radio, we have been given a new dial-in number for all of our listening audience. That new number is 515-605-9862. Again, 515-605-9862. That new number will be active as of December 1st. So I would ask that you all lock it into your phones and into your contacts list so that you will not miss out on any of the enlightenment and transformation programming. Okay, one love to you all. Peace and welcome everyone to another Chief Speaks on enlightenment and transformation. And of course, it is no secret that we are now broadcasting on the first day of the Gregorian year of 2017. All right, for those of you who put emphasis and importance on this particular day, I guess it certainly does deserve its own acknowledgement. But in any event, like I said earlier, you are listening to Chief Speaks. And I want to welcome all of you who have tuned in this Sunday dawning. And of course, I am Chief Yuya, Chief Jagna of the Anu Nation, the Anu Spiritual Order, and Head Instructor of the Sadhu House Spiritual Center. And as always, I want to welcome you all, and in particular, always those of you who come in on the archives. And you know, the reason why I say that to those of you who come in on the archives, why you hold a significance and a different kind of importance for me, is because sometimes we feel when we're coming into conscious information, I've spoken to many people who have regretted the time that they've come into the information and the season that they've come into it, and they've only wished that if I knew this information sooner and had this earlier in my life, things would have been so much different, and I maybe would have been able to have staved off so much pain and hurt in my own journey. And you know, it's always important to recognize that we usually get things when we're ready to see them in our mind's eye. You know, you can be introduced to something at a time when your mind is not at a space where you can process what it is that you're receiving or what it is that you're seeing. So it will just go right past you. And some things in our lifetime, they go past one time or two times or three times. You know, our opportunities are not infinite in one lifetime, but our lifetimes are infinite. You know, so it is a divine courtesy, and it is divine mercy that causes you to come into the understanding of certain teachings, a certain doctrine or dictum or law or mores and principles when you're ready to actually perceive them. Okay, so again, I give thanks for those of you who have come in maybe a year or two or three or four after this actual broadcast. You are acknowledged, just like those of you who listen live every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern to Chief Speaks. So if we're even dealing just with the Gregorian year of 2016, obviously, no one can deny, I don't think anyone from any spiritual system or ideology or belief system, that it was not a rugged year. A lot of purging went on in 2016, and it was a build-up for what's going on in the Gregorian year of 2017, which I'll explain a little bit. But I'll reiterate, as I knew, we don't really necessarily acknowledge January 1st of any year to be the actual new year. So for us, it is not the new year. All right. So I'm only going to speak about the significance of 2017 as a whole, and that time period, and the significance of today. All right. So this show, I decided, because I had, what I was really originally going to do was kind of run down the topics for 2017 that we'll be covering, and not just the topics, some of the new things we'll be doing and things like that. But I really wasn't feeling that in my spirit, to be honest. Just every time I kept sitting down and getting ready to do it and reflecting on it a bit, the vibe wasn't there. And I go with the spirit. I go with the vibes, because that's the way to do things. That's your core, and it engages with the earth and the breath of the ethers much sooner than your actual physical breath of thought does. Even though thought is so speedy and so quick and so swift, your spirit is much swifter. Okay, so I decided to kind of keep things loose and light in this show and do another freestyle show. As you know, sometimes I kind of just open up my mental flow to you all and just kind of speak, and so you can kind of witness a little bit how ideas and thoughts are worked out in my mind, as opposed to saying, okay, I'm going to talk exactly about this and then go from there. So absolutely, but we will be preparing for this coming year, though, and everything that's going on. So I figured, in a simple sense, to not put too much emphasis on what this society tells us to in terms of January 1st. I figured I would just speak about, for a moment, what it equates to mathematically. We'll just deal with that just for a moment, right? So, January 1st, 2017, if we add up the numbers, we get the number 3. All right, 1 for January, 1 for the 1st of January, so that's 2, right? And then we have 2017, so now we have 2 plus 2, that's 4, plus 1, that's 5, plus 7, that's 12. Number of completion, by the way, but we'll get into that. And then you take the 12 and you add the 1 and the 2 together, and you get 3. Okay, so for anyone wondering how I came up with that number, and I know sometimes some of you listening, always be compassionate. Always understand that these shows and these segments go out to a very wide audience, very wide, and everyone comes in, because it's so wide, everyone comes in at their own level, as niche as the subject matter is, metaphysics, occultism, Orisha, just living a spiritual life. It's a small community, but people are waking up every moment of the day, and they're hungry and they're thirsty for where to begin, where do I start? And certainly it can be impressive to swirl many thoughts and ideas around in the ethos that more so show off and showcase your own intellect, but it is more advantageous for the world when sometimes you can just give them basics. Sometimes it only takes an extra 10 seconds to say, this is why we do this. Okay, boom, and I keep going. Always teach. That was a part of the admonition of last year's reading. Teach, share. That's that vibration. If any of you deal with medicine, the animal medicine, that sharing is the vibration that's significant of Brother Turkey. Okay, so whenever you have turkeys coming in your path, or maybe even if you're driving and you see turkeys on the road, on the side of the road, coming out of wood, those wild turkeys, which are wild and rough, or you dream about them, or you just see them, it's usually telling you need to share. The turkey is a teacher, and it shares knowledge, it shares information, but, not to further digress. So we have this number 3, right? And that's what we're dealing with today. Now, I'm going to start you off by letting you know that 3 is a maternal number, okay? And it's so interesting because if you really just vibe with the essence of numbers themselves, they'll pretty much tell you what they are. I've never coined myself a numerologist, and I don't consider myself to be a numerologist. I have studied numerology, but just as a part of my general studies, because doing the type of work that I do, you end up having to study a lot of different things. So from astrology to numerology, I know how to read palms, I know how to read tea leaves, I know how to read cigar ash, do divination with that, candle magic. I know herb magic, I know sex magic, and all these different things, but it's not necessarily my focus field of study. So I just want to share that. One of the things that we mentioned on the last community show, we had referenced a struggle, a power struggle, really, or maybe an influence struggle, but a struggle going on between two prominent speakers in the conscious groups, and some of the things that were being said back and forth and whatnot and so forth and so on. And I really just say and share that these are just two individuals who are really showing what they are. That's all. And it's not just these two, it's a bunch who've been going back and forth and arguing and quote unquote beefing and exposing each other and so forth and so on, like little schoolgirls. Those little mean schoolgirls who flip friends over every year. They got a new best friend, a new crew they're hanging out with. That's basically what it is. But these are not scholars. These are not educators. These are not leaders. I even question their manhood. To be honest, I even question their manhood, because it's not like it's a sport. It's not like it's music, like it's hip hop, or if it's basketball or football or boxing or mixed martial arts, where it's competitive based. What we're doing here is not based on competition. In fact, the original aim was always unification, not division or the proclamation of who's better and who's worse or whatever. Any real man knows that the way you prove or disprove the next man is through your manifestation, not through your words. That's almost akin to using paperwork to disprove someone. Now you're swimming in the waters of the goat people. But we're the sheep, we're the lambs, we're the ones with the woolly hair. We're not the goats. The goats eat paper. They chew paper all day. They'll eat anything you throw at them. We're not goat people. So the words in the paper have never really been how we've proven what we are. We've proven what we are and what we do through our manifestations. That's how you can tell who the leader is, who the king is. That's how you can tell who's been putting in the work and so forth and so on. And that's the best kind of debate. I've often said that the quote unquote conscious debates should be a conscious show and prove. That would be more interesting. If you say you have a certain solution and I say I have a certain solution, I say my solution is better, and your camp says your solution is better, well then let's do like we do a science fair. Let's apply each solution and see which one yields the best results. Whichever one yields the best results, that's the winner. And what should the prize be? Well, that your camp or your nation yield to my nation now, and we absorb you into our movement. Yeah, but anyway, the number 3, and I told you this is a freestyle segment, all right? So you might say, I thought you was going to be talking about the numerology. Talking about a lot of different things, but trust me, it's all related to one thing. The many things are related to the one thing, right? So we're dealing with 112017. 112017 equates to the number 3. Number 3 is feminine in nature. And like I said, and some of you may have had that experience. When I was a youth, I used to really like to, like, numbers were my imaginary friends, believe it or not. And I would imagine the lives of numbers because I could see the energy, the spirits within them. And later on, when I went to learn more about numerology, things lined up pretty much just as I thought they would. I always knew 1 was masculine, 2 was feminine, 3 was feminine, 4 was masculine, 5 was young boy, could even be a young girl most time, but young boy, 6 feminine, 7 masculine, 8 feminine, 9 masculine. Okay, and I only knew that because I saw them as like, I guess, like if you had a children's cartoon or something and each number was dressed up as a person, it was that type of thing. When I say a youth, I mean when I'm 4, 5, 3, 4 years old. I always would make up these little, I guess, internal mental stories about the lives of each number and how they were, which one was insecure, which one was jealous, which one was confident, which one was bold, so forth and so on. So the number 3 I always saw as a child, but as like the golden child. 3 was the girl, but she was like the it girl, right? And primarily because she was, when we dealt with the 3, she was the first time where she was the moment of individuality. Okay, that's how I saw it as a child, because you had 1 standing alone, 1 plus 1, you could put 2 ones together, you get 2, right? But even 2, there's a pair, there's duality. Now 3 separates itself, okay, because it's an odd number in that sense, so it's not like the 1, which is a pillar that stands alone. The 3 now represents the individualism. It represents its ability to move beyond even conflict, its ability to manifest and be the commitment of a norm. Okay, so we're speaking about the vibration and the energy of today, 1/1/2017. For those of you who are looking for a way, to kind of, I guess, celebrate and acknowledge today, which is nothing wrong with, there's nothing wrong with taking some energy and saying, okay, well, this is what this day is going to mean for me, or this is what this moment is going to mean for me based on the vibratory meaning of a number, or even the vibratory meaning of a season. Currently we're in the winter season, and the winter season is very significant as well. Maybe I'll share a little bit of that as well. But your seasons have an esoteric meaning to them. The seasons are represented on the Opon Ifa, and each quadrant represents a different season, and there is a different energy and that rules over the season based on the movement of ether. Because ether moves through each season, and as it moves through each season, there's a certain quality that it provides to an individual if you tap into. So at certain seasons, you have the quality of thought, really, which I guess I could, that is the winter season. Winter season actually represents the vibration of thought. It's when we connect to that ground vibration, and there's a clear-headedness that comes, That's why I always tell you, the winter is your time when you need to kind of cocoon up and prepare, But I'll explain a little bit further what that means if I remember to come back to it. Like I said, we're freestyling a little bit. I think it's good to start off this time with a little fluidity, primarily being because that 3 is a feminine space, very deep feminine space. I'm sure many of you are familiar with the idea of the triple goddess vibration as well, or sometimes you have the Weirden sisters, or they call them the 3 Weirden sisters. Well, it was Weirden, like if you read the Frank Herbert Dune series, you have the Weirden women, which are like they're Jesuit witches, right? But then, and if you read an old Shakespearean and even really Victorian period, you would hear about the weird sisters or the weird women. Okay, and those were the witches. Okay, but typically you saw them referenced in numbers of 3, right? And so we're really just talking about the vibration of today, right? And when I say today, I don't mean as a time period. I mean this day, today. So that vibration of the 3 in this day, one of the things that you really want to be meditating on, family, is the representation of our movements towards space, the representation of and when I say space, our movements towards distancing and finding our own moments, finding our own isolation. This is represented by the Orisha Olokun. Okay, Olokun itself represents space. All right, now if you go back to some of the earlier shows, you'll hear the breakdowns and things that I've given on Olokun, And I think sometimes maybe that's why people think I need to be corrected sometimes, I think, because when I flash conversations about Orisha or different systems, they're not aware of the background. Because, it's been like a steady maybe year, almost maybe even 2 years now, where I've been focusing more on the esoterics of our own psychology and metaphysics and things like that, which is not a diversion really from Orisha, only a diversion through name. But I think some people they came in late and they only picked up on that. So they're like, oh, well, he's dealing with psychology or self-help information. Why is he talking about Orisha? You got to go back into the archives and you're going to see 2-3 years worth of just straight, very direct information about Yoruba systems, information about Zulu systems, Medu, Kabbalah, astrology. So, this is warlock and sorceress information. Please do not be mistaken on that. But there are so many different dimensions to it that can be addressed and can be dealt with. And that kind of takes us to, again, the 3 today. The 3 in our Kabbalistic system is the Sephirah of Bina. Okay, and Bina represents understanding. Okay, because understanding comes through the culmination of the 3, right? So if you even think about understanding is the third product of what? The 1 and the 2. What are the 1 and the 2? Knowledge and wisdom. So knowledge, wisdom equals understanding, which is the number 3. Okay, and understanding, or that third dimension of being, represents the culmination, what comes after friction. When you have the friction between 2 forces or 2 individuals, you have a third product that's created, whether it's created in a crystalline form or whether it's the organization of primordial energy. Okay, you get that 3, often represented by triangles. Right now, of course, many of you have probably seen the symbol of also the triple goddess, and you'll see those 3 triangles put together. Or sometimes the triplicity is represented by the Vesica Pisces. 2 circles are put together, and there's a space in between that represents what we call the Vesica Pisces or the Vesica Pisces. And that not only represents the womb or the opening way for the fish, as they call it, the opening for the fish, but it also represents the oval opening of a lingam. A lingam is a penis, a staff. Okay, so a lot of people think the Vesica Pisces is just the vaginal opening. It is, but it's also actually the penile opening as well. But that number 3, very interesting number, because again, it also connects you to the vibration of Saturn, right? And that's significant when we look at the events of 2016, in terms of, the obvious things that the obvious thing that none of us can deny that has been very prominent in 2016 has been all the deaths. Whether you're into esoteric or metaphysic information or not, like I said, you can't really deny that there were a lot of deaths in 2016. It was almost marked as that, not to mention the excessive proliferation of the police brutality. But what was interesting was that we had so many instances of that brutality ending in death. It wasn't just people being beat up or being maced, or being hit with rubber bullets. It was people being killed. So there was like this mass purging that went on in a certain way for 2016, and I'll explain that more. I'll get into that because I want to just deal with today for a minute, right? And like I said, please excuse me if I'm jumping around a bit, but I definitely made the decision that, like I said, and that's the fluidity of that feminine energy that I would kind of just jump around a little bit. But you're dealing with the creative power of the triad, right? Or of the triangle, again, representing also the family unit, mother, father, child, or children. In the aspects of Chokma and Baina, you have the twins. Okay, so that twins would be like Luke, Leia, fathers being Anakin and Padme. That's just a little reference to Star. I know I did the whole Star Wars thing last time, but the triad, the power of the triad also represents birth, life, and death. Okay, so or what we would call the beginning, the middle, and the end. And that representation is also exemplified in the family unit. Now, a lot of times when I'm speaking to you all, one of the things that I bring up often is the power of family. So many people calling with this issue and that issue and that issue. And one of the first questions I'll ask, and you already know the answer, because you can always tell when you're talking to someone without a family. You can always tell. Just like when you see a child, you can always tell which child has a father and mother at home and which one doesn't. It's clear as day, And the same thing when you're speaking to a woman, you can always tell a woman who doesn't have a man, regardless of her sexual status. And what I mean by that, regardless of if she has a lover or not, if she has a quote unquote boyfriend. But you can always tell if she has a man in her life or not. In the same instance, you can tell if a man has a woman in his life or not. You can see the difference because there's always an imbalancing. There's a non-completion of the actual necessary cycle of past, present, and future. So there's a power of manifestation in the physical realm, which this realm is what? The third dimension, right? Third planet from the sun. So that 3 becomes a significant number. And if you notice that within this society, the dominant society, when I say this society, let me be clear. Within the Anglosphere, or what we like to call Western society, there is an aggressive agenda and campaign to maintain division and dissolution within the family unit. Why is that? Because the family unit is, like I've said so many times, the highest science of the universe. Okay, it's the manifestation that exists in the power of this current universe, of, like I said, of body, soul, and spirit, of past, present, future, birth, life, and death, of mother, child, father. You see, even the idea of the Trinity, of course, obviously you can't get away from thoughts of the Trinity whenever you're speaking about threes, regardless of your belief or your faith. in different things. I don't want to just reduce it to belief, but your faith or your thought in certain things, it's hard to get away from that Trinity representation of Father, Spirit, and Son, or again taking it to the Kemetic tradition of Osor, Set, and Heru. Some of you may know as Isis, Osiris, and Horus. But that 3 is such an auspicious number in terms of the representation of higher level manifestation. Sometimes it's represented as 3 men, sometimes or 3 males, I should say. Sometimes it's represented as 3 females. And I'm still just vibing on the vibration of today. This day right now that you are all listening, which is January 1st, 2017, right? So, again, dealing with the sacredness of that 3. I did a show, was it 2015, I think? The Jinn, Aladdin and the Jinn, and I spoke about the Jinn and the polishing of the lamp, Aladdin and the lamp. But what is the Jinn when they come out in the mythology? What do they always grant you? 3 wishes. You see, and what usually happens on the 3rd wish? On the 3rd wish, you usually manifest an understanding, because the first 2, they combat with each other in a way where sometimes they may even cancel each other out, or you ask for the 3rd to cancel out the mistakes of the first 2. You see. So in so many different ways, we see that 3 is used as a representation of the supreme power of understanding and wisdom. For instance, in our Kemetic traditions, we have Tahuti, right? Consort being Ma'at. And Tahuti in Grecian form is called Thoth, right? Where you get the word thought, right? And also what I feel where we get the word thought. And I know somebody say, well, no, thought means, a ratchet chick in the hood who just sleeps around a lot. Okay. But, always understand, and we're going to speak about that a little bit, because I want to talk about the season just a little bit. There's always a divine spark inside of darkness. Always. Can't get away from it. The divine spark that lives inside of darkness is like the humidity that you just can't get out of, places in your car. And, there's always moisture somewhere. There's always humidity that wreaks havoc from the inside out. There's always a divine spark that wreaks havoc from the inside out. This is one of the high order understandings when we're dealing with alchemy. One of the base metals that we use in alchemy are what? Lead. And lead is considered, one of the things we do, we start to destroy and we break down, and we may melt the lead because we need to release the divine spark that exists inside of the lead. Okay. So within everything, there is a divine spark, and it's important to recognize that even as you're dealing with the impregnation of the number 3. Look at the number 3. It looks like a pregnant woman. That's how I always saw it as a child. All right. So, because you got the big breast, you got the big belly. All right. But within that 3, that represents the divine spark of understanding. So even when we're dealing with the term thought, we saw that girl's a thought. Well, what is she also called? A whore. Coming from the word Horus, or the name Horus. Heru, light. Thought. Thought, Thoth, Tahuti. Okay, another form of light, a thought, or divine spark and wisdom. All right, so always, as my elder used to tell me, he would always speak. It still does. He speaks about the African village. So, a lot of times when we be doing work in the hood and whatever, he said, yeah, Heru, that's what they call me, Heru. Yeah, Heru, this is the village. This is the village. So we driving by and seeing people on the stoops and on the corner. And after a while, I started to see it as such. Yeah, this is the village. And we got to kind of reorganize the village, but see the regality within it. You know, for those of you who are also looking towards that redemption of the hood, in a sense, don't try to redeem the hood, destroy the hood to release the divine spark inside of it. You know, and there's a way to destroy it. You don't become it and get inside of it to destroy it. So for those of you using that as an excuse, you know, most of the time people will do that because they're afraid to move beyond their current structure. There's too much cowardice there. But even in the idea of Tahuti, right? What did the Greeks call Tahuti? Thoth. And they called him also not only Thoth, but they called him Hermes Trismegistus. Right? Hermes Trismegistus. If any of you have ever heard that word. And they talked about how Hermes Trismegistus wrote the Emerald Tablets. All right. Sometimes they even refer to him as an Atlantean, and I've broken down the Atlantean thing, but now that I think about it, I don't think I've ever done a show on Atlantis or Lemuria. I don't think. I'd have to go to the archives, but I don't remember doing it. But I know I've broken down what Lemuria is, or Lemuria. It's probably more accurate. And the Atlantean pineal aspect. But maybe one day I'll look to the archives. I might do a show on that. But yeah, Hermes Trismegistus. So what does Trismegistus mean? Tris, 3, Megistus, mega, Megistus, great. So Hermes Trismegistus, or Thoth Trismegistus, means Hermes or Tahuti, 3 times great. Or sometimes they'll also even say 3 times blessed. Okay, so that Trismegistus, again, dealing with the 3, is a high vibratory number, right? And even in the Emerald Tablets, if you read, I think it's tablet 11 or 12, no, 11 or 10. It speaks about the power of the vibration of the number 3. And it tells you that 3 is the mystery that comes from the great one. Who's the great one? Hermes Trismegistus, right? And the 3 points it deals with are God, truth, and freedom. Okay? So it you start to understand that the intersecting of those 3 vibrations of God, truth, and freedom bring the great power, that great power of that understanding. And in many instances, when you're looking at that number 3, you'll see that there is a correlation in each triad. So for instance, one of the things that we talk about is the mother, the maiden, and the crone. When we speak about the triple goddess vibration, right? The mother, maiden, and crone. One of the things that we don't mention enough are, because in triple goddess, there is no goddess. All right, so let me not even use that terminology. I'm just using it for reference purposes. No such thing as a goddess, because God has no gender. All right, and I know a lot of women get offended when I say that, that there's no such thing as a goddess, because they feel like they're being stripped of something. The only thing you're being stripped of is your ignorance. Okay, so to understand that you can still consider yourself to be a divine being, or even consider yourself to be a god, but when you call yourself a goddess, you're actually reducing and diminishing what it is that you're trying to strive towards, or what it is that you're trying to represent. It's like putting the et on something. You have the root of something, or the larger form of something, and then you have an et. A smurfette. And think about that for a second. These are the games that society plays on you. You had, and I know you're saying, he's talking about the Smurfs. Yeah, I'm talking about the Smurfs, because this is a divine spark that lives inside of everything, even a German cartoon. You had Handy Smurf. You knew what he did, right? You had Brainy Smurf. You knew what he did. He was a smart one. You had Hefty Smurf. He was the one who was a strong one, who worked out all the time. You had Grumpy Smurf. He was the one who, I hate this, I hate that. He was mad at everything, right? You had, like I think I said, Papa Smurf, and he led the village, right? And then you had Smurfette. What did she do? Right. Exactly. Nothing. She didn't do anything. and she wore high heels. You know, they running all the place. She on these high heels and big wide blue feet. Smurfette did absolutely nothing. She had no designation in that Marxist society, because that's what the Smurfs were. They were based on Marxism. Okay, that's why Papa Smurf wore that red like that. But and then you had Gargamel, the long nose. He was a Jew, and his cat was who? Israel. Yisrael. You see, but in any event, so when you take on that designation of the goddess, like the godette, you know, you're reducing yourself. Now, some may say, well, but you have Amunet and Ra'et. Yeah, you do. But when you say Ra or you say Ra'et, one does not take from the other. We're talking about the synthesis of the same thing. Goddess doesn't do that. Okay. So, you know, just as a side note. So, like I said, you have the three energies, the three feminine energies, or the three Wajet, the maiden, the mother, and the crone. Well, there's actually a complement through masculine representation as well, where you have the warrior, the father, and the sage. Okay, so again, a lot of times we don't even acknowledge that, and that's part of just, you know, the effeminization of this actual society. You know, we don't really speak too much about the real power of men, and especially in the conscious community, there's like a fear of doing that. You're not allowed to bring that up. All you're allowed to talk about is the goddess and the woman is God and the woman is God, you know, which is more of the same pandering game being played. It's a game. You know, that doesn't empower anybody. You know, and what kind of psychotic person would worship something that doesn't really truly reflect them? You know, if you're speaking about the sanity of African thought, you know, real African thought. I'm not talking about the neo-colonial Africans, but true African thought, you know, would never express anything like that, where I'm going to deal with a deity that doesn't even reflect me. No. That's why you had, you know, the dualism in your deities. You had Obatala, but then you also had Oduduwa. You had Tahuti, and you also had Ma'at. You had Osor, you had Oset, you had Nebhet, you had Set. And really Oset was Osor and Set in one. But, you know, that's neither here or there. But there was always a representation of a duality of gender. Okay, so all of that, she's my God, she's my, you know, that's people trying to play you, man. They're selling oils on the street, and, you know, and what I mean by that, they're just selling something. You know, they're trying to sell you something. That's no offense to people who sell oils on the street. I'm using it as an example of someone you walking by and they just figuring out what to say to get you, to get some to separate you from the currency in your pocket. Okay, like I said, if you have the mother and the maiden and the crone, you also have the warrior, the father, and the sage. And the crone mates with the sage, the mother mates with the father, the maiden mates with the warrior. So now you should even think about that in terms of your dualistic aspects. And we're still just talking about January 1st, 2017. You see how long you could go just on a number or an idea? You see how much you can pull from it? You know, as a side note, how much data is there a lot of times that we look over. But, you know, for you older women, a lot of you are still looking for a warrior. And you don't realize that at your age, that's not your proper mating. That's why you're not going to find one. You know, you have to be the crone, the wise woman. And some of you are not wise. Can't tell you how many 50, 60, 70-year-old women I speak to who have the mentality of 13-year-olds. You're just old now, but you haven't really become an elder. And how many 50, 60, 70-year-old males I speak to who have the mentality of 15-year-olds. You just got old. Okay, so with an imbalance that bad, you'll never really find your proper mating until you slide into your proper, spot. So the wise woman is mated to the wise man. The crone is mated to the sage. The mother is mated to the father. The father is mated to the mother. Okay. So if you are looking to be a mother, or you're at that stage where you can still be a mother, because I have some of you clients who are 60 years old talking about you want to have babies. No. There's something beautiful about being the crone and the sage. There's something beautiful about being the mother and the father. And there's something beautiful about being the maiden and the warrior. Embrace each stage. Embrace that sweet death that has to occur and the chaos that has to occur before moving into the next throne. I'll build on that a little bit. So in the same instance, if you're a young maiden, you should be looking for a warrior. That's your proper mating. Okay. And those ages are not the same, just so you know, between male and female. Now, the only people who will riff and complain about that are females, because the clock is different. I'm going to tell you that right now. Like when I spoke about that previously and gave that guidance, it was females who said rude things. What's he talking about? A 40-year-old man with a 19-year-old woman, a 20-year-old woman. I don't even think I went that. I might have gone that extreme. I don't know. But I was making an extreme example of something. I wasn't telling all the 40-year-olds to go out and find 19-year-olds. So there's nothing wrong with that. But, we develop different things at different ages. And a lot of times we end up really shooting ourselves in the foot because we're working off of the wrong clocks. Men should not be working off of the clocks of women, and women should not be working off of the clocks of men. That's social suicide. So you got men who will say, no, I'm waiting. I'm trying to get my business together, my life together. I want some property. I want this and I want that before I have children. Now, he may not really be able to get solid and founded till he's 40 years old, which is usually about right. And he might have a woman who's with him who says, yeah, we're waiting. You working off the wrong clock, sweetheart. Now you're 40 years old, 42 years old, struggling to have a baby. A healthy pregnancy at that. Some do it sometimes. But also think about yourself at 40 or 42 or 45, what you really feel like doing as a woman. Do you really feel like, staying up all night with crying babies and whatnot like that? You base yourself off the wrong clock. And then you got some males who do the same thing. A woman, she knows, her prime fertility years, 15 to 23. And she's young. She's 21, 22, 23. She wants to have babies. And her man may be 21, 22, 23. So he says, okay, let's have these babies. But meanwhile, he's not grounded and founded yet. He's got like 20 more years to go before he's really actually ready to bear the emotional burden of a family. It's not just the financial. It's not just the physical. It takes a lot for a man to mature emotionally and be ready for a family. And when certain things happen out of turn and out of step, it throws the entire institution off. And the institution usually never even recovers. Never, because everything was done in the wrong time. So when I spoke about, a man who's 40 may get with someone who's 22, 23, because that's a closer mating. He's founded, he's emotionally ready, she's fertile. He can lead, she respects his leadership because she's not watching him still fumbling and bumbling through life, and he's gotten over his jealousies and all of those dragons that he needs to slay and get out of his system. Chances are at that age, he's his own man. It's so many different things that come along with that. And these things are required to rear healthy children and to lead a family properly. So that's something that I had brought up before, and the women didn't understand it because, of course, they don't like how that sounds. And I'm sure all the women who commented were over 23 or 24, 25. But sometimes you wait too long to do certain things, and then you try to shame other people out of doing what they're supposed to do, and that's just not going to work on any level. And it's just not going to work on any level. You have to do what makes sense and what's right, and pay attention to what's not working consistently. Don't be like the religious Americanized blacks who keep praying to gods who don't do anything for them. That's just behind backwards. So yeah, the profundity of that 3, that we're dealing with today is very important, or that Trinity energy of Shiva, Brahma, and Vishnu. Okay, so there you have another triplicity as well, Arumulo, Duduwa, Batala. You have another one, and like I said, it connects to that Kabbalistic feminine principle of Bina, who's like Bina would be like the what was her name? The Oracle, right? The Oracle in the movie, the Matrix trilogy, right? The Matrix trilogy. It would be like the Oracle in that particular. Or also, if we would look at the tarot, the third tarot is the Empress. Okay, so very similar again to the Oracle. The Empress is that very calm energy, and she's calm because she's in charge. Like, she's running this. She knows what she's doing, and she's full, and she's engorged with the primal womb. It's engorged with fertility. Okay, so anyone wondering like, well, what should I do today? It's whether you celebrate the new year or not. I don't know where you guys are at with it. Everyone's in a different space, but it's that vibration of the Empress or the 3. Today is a day of femininity, the celebration of femininity. And when you're celebrating femininity too, you're celebrating the enjoyment of life. Okay, being, the enjoyment of being able to be inspired, to be able to be enjoyed, to be able to have enthusiasm and cheerfulness implanted into you. Okay, that is part of the enjoyment of that divine feminine. And again, like I said, that triad of spirit, soul, and body. You see that within the representation of a pregnant woman. Okay, so, and it's so much more. I mean, I could go on. I could go on for days, with this, with a number, and just the shape. We didn't even get into the angles of the actual number 3, or the composition of the 1, the 2, the other 1, and then the 7. I mean, you have more in there, as well. But yeah, that 3 vibration is keen. And for those of you who like to study the Bible and read your Bible on these days, tap into the vibration of what they consider to be the patirs of your biblical understandings, which would be Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham. Well, that's post flood, and Yaakov, which was Yisrael, Isaac, and Abraham. And Yaakov is significant as well for this year. I'll explain when we start dealing with the number 10, because we're in a 10 year now, 2017, 2017, 2 plus 0 plus 1 plus 7 equals 10. So you have, after the flooding or the deluge of great wisdom, you have Yisrael, Isaac, and Abraham. And before that flooding, you have Enoch, Noah, and Abel. Okay, so again, the 3. Even when you deal with New Testament, you have the those who got to see the actual transfiguration, as they call it, of the Christ consciousness. Those were James, John, and Peter. Okay. So, you're dealing with James, John, and Peter. You're dealing with light, the rock, and you're dealing with the guardian, light, rock, and guardian. All right, maybe another day. Some days I have the stomach for digging more into the Bible stuff, and some days I don't feel like it. And it's not because I have any issues with diving into it a bit, but it's because of sometimes the excitement. Sometimes people get too excited when I start talking about the Bible. I'll start breaking down so many things that, are clearly and obviously African and tainted less. Not untainted, because all of this stuff is tainted, but tainted less. And it's like, And then when I say, well, let's deal with the archangels, then all the pencils come out and everybody gets excited. So sometimes I pull back. I do the hermit thing, I'll explain what that means. But even if you want to just deal with angelic forces, for the 3, you would want to work with Gabriel, Michael, and Lucifer. Okay, that's your vibration of the 3 that you want to really be working with: Gabriel, Michael, and Lucifer. And Michael deals with the will of the divine. Gabriel deals with like the power, the force of the divine. Even though Gabriel is more of a feminine force, even though we associate that with Ogun, just so you should know, that gives you that idea of what that power, where it comes from. But the will, Michael, is masculine, and then you have Lucifer, which is the light. Okay, and keep in mind that out of Africa, this is all out of Africa. All right, so for those of you who think this is a diversion into something else, it's not. It's all out of Africa. We dealing with indigenous wisdom at all times. That's all I really build on, is indigenous wisdom, okay, and African deep thought. I could talk about some other stuff, but I'm honestly just not interested in other things as much as I am the deep thought of my ancestors. And understand that deep thought has been asserted around the world. People have asserted that deep thought as their own, and part of our work is to reclaim it, to take it back. And one of the ways you do it is not just by name, but by your ability to unleash the spark inside of it. You see, so I know even if we're dealing with Roman literature or Grecian literature or Scandinavian literature or literature just from different parts of the world, I know that there's a certain perspective and there's a certain tool that I have to crack it open, that is gifted to me and bestowed to me as a melanin dominant man that other people don't have, because that's my birthright. So you reclaim your ancestral contribution to the world corpus of wisdom by your ability to crack it open, not just to steal it back or to grab it or just to steal it, period. Because other people thought of things. Other people had thoughts, but your ability to crack it open and decipher it in a way that was only written and designed for you is significant. It's just like 500, 600, 700, 800 years from now, somebody will find somebody's rhyme book, or a good one is even a graffiti book. That's one thing. I have a lot of graffiti books. I don't do graffiti, but I had a lot of friends who were artists, coming up. And that's one thing I always really enjoyed and appreciated was just visual art. And a lot of times they would be running through these books and they would just have them on the side or whatever, or throwing them out. I said, don't throw that, let me get that, So on my bookshelf with all my other stuff, I have all these old graffiti books from back in the days that I enjoy, because I just enjoy the process. As an artist myself, I enjoy observing one's process. And a lot of those things that were on books later went on murals and later went on trains, back in the days when you could still paint on the trains before they started using the new material where you couldn't spray paint on them anymore. But so that visual process is a powerful thing, but the decoding of it. So someone may find that stuff years later and not know what the heck they're looking at. Just like some will look at the Medu and not know what they're really looking at. But those who understand the culture, if you came up in a time where graffiti was coming alive and you understood the significance of why things were written a certain way, not only because you didn't want people to be able to read everything you wrote because you didn't want to get caught, but also it was for a certain subculture. If you wasn't a part of the hip hop culture, this isn't for you to be able to read. Okay. And the fact that, we're writing these things with spray paint cans is also significant. So the way I'm going to write it is going to be different than if I was just using a pencil or paintbrush. Now you have to understand the whole cultural meaning behind all of that first, before you even can begin to understand why it was written the way it was written and what it actually means. And then by the time you end up figuring out what letters are even written, what is that? It's like Jean-Michel Basquiat looking at his art, right? Even before he was doing the larger visual pieces, he was just tagging around New York. But if you read a lot of the sentences, it looks like they were written like he started in the middle of the sentence and then went to the beginning, or they were written backwards. You'd have to understand the mentality of New York City, and maybe even someone coming from a Haitian household in New York City at that time, and the culture of that and what that meant, So the deciphering is a part of the way that you reclaim and you own the information of your egun. You see, 3 is a time when you should also be enjoying the earth vibration. Just so you know. I won't get into. I could go on a whole nother road with that, but it's that earth vibration. Just so you know, in particular, fruit, the greenery of the grass, trees, things like that. This is a time when you enjoy those particular members of this movement that we call life. But I did tell you this would be a show of free form. All right, so there's a lot of tangentization, but I'm opening you up to as well to the thought process that occurs, like when I'm speaking or answering questions and things like that. There's a lot of cross-referencing that happens internally, and I don't always mention the names of archetypes and things like that because sometimes it confuses people. They're not as aware of all these different traditions, and then you have people who are still in that space where they didn't know that the traditions relate to each other. So when you start speaking about Hebraic form and Kemetic form and Yoruba form or Khan form, and then you take it to Grecian and Roman, and you go all of these different places, and then I might start speaking supreme mathematics. People get confused. They're like, okay, what is he talking? Like, where are we going with this? What is he talking about? Without really understanding that all of those are cloaks for a divine spark. And that is really the profundity of this 2017 piece that we're coming into. The profundity is the holding back, or the kind of like having that spark within the sphere of an ovum. And like I said, just dealing with today, of course, we have the power of 3, kind of like the three-headed dog, Cerberus, you also had the 3 sirens as well. Forgot about the sirens. You had the 3 sirens. I knew their names: Hesperides, Greya, and Hore. But the 3. And I think I mentioned earlier Vishnu, Brahma, and Krishna. You can't mention them without mentioning Lakshmi, Kali, and Parvati. Or even Parvati, Lakshmi, and Saraswati. You got to kind of mention them all together when you mention Brahma, Vishnu, like I said, and Krishna, so many trinities. But like I said, we're in a 10-year, so I kind of want to speak on that for a moment, that value of the 10, what that really represents for us going forward in the year. And I know usually I'll do an Ifa reading for the financial new year. I don't think I'm gonna do that this year. I don't feel I'm gonna do that. Maybe I will. We still got time. We'll see. But I don't. In my mind's eye, I don't see it coming. All right. So we're gonna roll a little differently, than we have, because I think I've been doing those for you all for maybe the past 4 years or so. Right. Okay. And I know people do get value from them because I've heard people referencing them. But sometimes there's a time when things need to change around and we need to do something different. And really importantly, that is what that 10-year represents, or let's just say even the number 10, right? The number 10 really does represent a regeneration of things, when you're coming back to the dualism, because prior to that, when you're dealing with single digit numbers, single digit numerology, associate that with being single, just like as a person, when you're single, when you're not connected to someone in that sense. So when you're single, and that's why it's important to try to the best of your ability to find yourself, figure out who you are, discover who you are when you're with yourself, because the expressive profundity of that is because in that moment and in that time, you're determining your archetypical character, and that's why you study the Orisha and the Luau and the archangels and the Sephiroth and all of these different energies and representations of a larger energy, because you're striving to understand what you are archetypically. But then what happens is that when you now come into a space where you make your combinations, you're now manifesting the value of archetypes. So with less words, single digits represent archetypes, double digits represent manifestation. Okay, so we could have the number 1, for instance, right? The number 1 represents an archetype of obviously the pillar, definition, direction, the fullness of masculinity. I mean, we could go on. It represents the sword. The sword represents iron. The sword is the one that divides one side from another and resolves conflict. Just like in Yoruba, we have the machete, and it is known that that Ogun is an energy that resolves conflicts. And one of the ways that he has resolved conflicts in the past is by cutting roads that divide nations. So you go over there, you go over there, you share that side of the river, you share that side of the river. Same, it's the same spark that travels through different systems. But so you have that, right? But then when you put the two together, when you put a 1, because by itself it's an idea when it's in a single digit. But when you put, let's say, another 1 with another 1, right? 1, 1, and you come up with the number 11, and that manifests to 2, now you're dealing with the concepts and ideas of manifestation, excuse me, because two things are coming together. So us being in a 10-year now is significant because, of course, we're dealing with manifesting, right? So very simple sense, just always and that's in anything. Anytime you're looking at numbers, you're trying to figure something out, and you see certain numbers that keep coming up for you or whatever, you want to factor them down to their single, but also factor them down to the double digit. But each one means something different because numbers have a life to them. It was in fact, even the thief Pythagoras, and he got that from Imhotep. But Imhotep taught about the decameter, or the metrics for 10, and the way that Pythagoras interpreted it was that 10 is an actual deity. So it was like you have the numbers, right? You have the single digit numbers, and those would almost be like kind of like beings, or they're beings as a part of a spiritual hierarchy, or spiritual movement. And then when they all get to the number 10, then they represent, okay, now deification has occurred. You see, one has become a deity, and that's not far from what is right. That's not too far from the truth, to be honest with you. Even when you study the sciences of the Rose Cross holders, many of you may know that today as the Rosicrucians, right? But they're the Rose Cross. There's 4 arc deities that they deal with, right? And those arc deities, they represent fire and life in a certain way, but they also represent the culmination, or the cardinal points that culminate what one would call a deity. And those arc energies are Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, and Uriel. A lot of times we call it Uriel, that energy, but it's really pronounced Uriel, or sometimes it's Uriel, but Uriel. So Michael, which many of you would call Michael, like saying Michael is Michael Jackson, and he's really like, Michael's like the highest, and then you have Raphael, like Raphael, I'm sure some of you have friends named Raphael, and Gabriel, which often is pronounced Gabriel, and then you have Uriel. Okay, so you find that in all of those names you have that Ka, Ra, Bri, Ra, and then of course you have El, and you already know what El is. El as the same as or Al. That suffix is letting you know that we're talking about divinity. Once you see El is divinity. So let's just say if the name was Mika, right? Mika doesn't mean the same as Mikael. In the same sense that in Yoruba, Su does not mean the same as Osu. You see, Ogun, Ogungun, which is a word, Gun doesn't mean the same as Ogun or Egun. You see, so you can really see that in many other words, but again, it's the prefix, in our Yoruba of the O that now signifies that we're speaking about the divinity of something. So you could have like Rafa or Rafi, Lion King, and Rafa, is healing. So even in Hebraic form, we're just dealing with the science of healing. When we're speaking about Mikael, Mika is the idea of presence, of coming into being, and you notice you have me, I, my. When you're dealing with the Yoruba, of course, and Ka is spirit. So it's like I'm coming into my spiritual ownness, my spiritual oneness. But when you put it together, Mikael, it's like now it is God, or the divine is coming into the thought or the mindset of the high intelligence or of the cosmic being. You see, once you put that L on that suffix, it changes the whole landscape. And Gabriel is no different. If your name is Gabri. Right, so if then Gabri is just like, okay, strong, somebody or something that's strong. Even it takes you also to the idea of Heru, which is a whole nother thing as well. But the Gabri is just that. But then when you put the L, Gabriel, it's like, oh, God's strength, or the divine strength. The divine's redeemer, the divine's champion. Ra'el, no different. You're dealing with Uhra. You're dealing with light in many senses. Uhra or is assimilates itself to intelligence, which of course is light, or even in physical representation, the sun, right? But then when you say Urael, then all of a sudden it's the divine sun. It's the divine's light. It's the divine's thought. And that's what it's really dealing with, your ability to segregate the illusion from what is real, or what we would call a lot of times discernment. That's what discernment is, being able to be clear of thought and be able to discern things, so by themselves, right? You just regular words, Gabri, Rafa, Ura or Uri, Mika, but so Mika would be like will, that's like the throne. It'd be like, how you move towards action, which is significant again to the 10. And then Uri is thought. Rafa, healing through breath. That's what Rafa is, the science of healing through breath. That's why Raphael, you read, they'll say, oh God, the healing powers of God. The angel I call forth, Raphael. But you got, like, when you really understand what it is, it's like, no, it's the breath that travels through the most momentous and auspicious vibration of the moment. That's what Raphael is. Raphael is your situational awareness. It's understanding the Odu of the moment. So for instance, I go from Guinea. I'm taken from Guinea and brought to Cuba, right? Or the place known as Cuba. So the herbs and the healing modalities that I had available to me in Guinea, I don't have in Cuba, right? So it's that Raphael, that wind that travels through the spirit of the season of the moment, that pulls the greatest healing from the ethers for whatever the contextual environment is. So we may have eaten this herb when we were in Guinea, or when we were in Togo, or we were in Benin, but we were taken from there and brought to Cuba, or brought to Jamaica, or Martinique. And now in these places, we learn that this is the way to live. This is the best time to sleep. This is the best time, to do this, or the best colors to wear, whatever for there. And that's, your healing comes from your ability to take advantage of your environment. It's kind of one simple way to kind of put it, but really gather the most ire, which we call a fortune, from the Odu that you exist in, or the mystery that you are now currently residing in. You see? So yeah, you have those vibrations, like I said, the healing. And then when you're dealing with Gabriel, you're dealing with health. You're dealing with its strength, but it's the strength that comes through finding nourishment in the environment. That's why Gabriel will relate us to our Kemetic Geb, the earth, which relates us to Ogun, even though Heru Kuti is also Ogun as well. And really Geb would probably be close to like Onile, but Geb is like a combination of Onile and Ogun. The nourishment, the spiritual forces that come forth from the earth that provide us nourishment, and your ability to know and to travel through those different environments and those different spiritual contexts, which we also call our seasonal awareness. That is the grail. That is the holy grail. That's in essence, or what they call the divine chalice. That ability to know within, because that chalice represents a womb. And that was perverted even in the Grecian form of the zodiacal archetype of Aquarius. You got the guy with the cup going around to the different deities, but the cup represented his butthole. And he was sharing. This is, Ganymedes, Zeus's lover, Ganymedes, sharing his booty hole with all of the different deities, but you gotta dig underneath, because in all corruption, there is a divine spark to be found to really be able to process and understand what's being said, and kind of discern. You separate the particles of different dimensions. Our dimensions are comprised of a quantum field of particles, and you have to be able to, it's like dancing between raindrops. It becomes that fine, almost in a sense, or that level of fine movement, to really be able to sometimes discern what's happening. But again, we're still vibrating, taking us to that ideology of the 10-year, right? And like I said, the 10-year is significant. Significant for a few reasons, but like I said, one of the reasons that is significant is because of its ability to kind of reset us, in terms of like what we would consider to be our movements, our holy movements or whatever. Of course, there's a resetting that goes on in that sense, but even outside of that, like I said, it's when you're getting into the double digits now, you're getting into the science of manifestation. And one of the key things that's manifested through those 10-year vibrations is wholeness. Okay, because you're dealing with, the 1 and you're dealing with the 0. So you're dealing with masculine and feminine, or the father and the mother. You see, so it kind of still takes you back to that vibration of, things coming together, or there being a combination of friction there in a sense. And through that friction, or through that cooperative work in economics, right? We take it to our Kwanzaa values. But, it takes you to that space where you now can have a deeper understanding of the value and the purpose of union, of individuals coming together. And why I often will say, hey, you got a man, hey, you got a woman, and why asking that question yields so much information, and like I said, usually when I ask, I already know the answer, because you can tell just from the imbalance of the person. But a lot of times it's good to ask questions so people don't feel like you're shoving things down their throat per se. So, again, we're tapping into the vibration of that 10-year. And, there's something else that I often share with a lot of times when I'm speaking to clients and stuff. And, we're talking about the seasons, and, I will often say, when that winter comes, it's that cocoon season. But, also just the idea of cocooning, you can also relate that to the vibration of the hermit. Okay, so that winter vibration is usually because things are cold. They're usually quieter, even though sound travels more because you don't have all the leaves on the trees and everything. But there's certainly a different type of indwelling silence. There's a dormancy and an introversion that you can feel that nature is going through. You can almost feel the symbolic contemplation, of nature. And in that time, you kind of tend to get your hermit mode on a bit, where you're going more inward, or, you're developing and cultivating the internal seeds, which is really, again, you take it to our tarot and you have the symbol of the hermit. And one of the things that you'll always notice with that hermit card is that the hermit card always carries a lantern. You have different forms in which he appears in terms of like the way that the card may be designed. But one of the things that you'll see, especially the older hermit cards, you would see him walking through the snow, which is very significant. But you always see that hermit card usually covered in a cloak of some sort and holding a lantern. And what that cloak again represents is the the shadow or the illusion or the covering that that we put around our divine light or our divine spark. And of course the lantern represents the divine spark. Now if you study also the science of the lantern in Kabbalistic modality, you'll see that for that particular card you'll see interlocking triangles for the lantern, establishing a 6-point star. Okay, and 6 points represents Virgo, the virginal aspect. So that's also very significant, because when you're dealing with, I'll explain with the Virgo, but the Virgo connects you to the path of Yod. Okay, and I'll explain what that means. But that astrological meaning or the astrological sign of Virgo being prevalent there is very significant. And again, like I said, we're dealing with, just even from a seasonal aspect, the value that comes forth in terms of the numbers that we're working with. And like I said, when you're dealing with Deca is the Greek 10. Even when they would write it out in Greek, if you notice, they write it as a triangle. Okay, so again, you see the significance of the 3. Again, you see the significance of the Pythagorean theorem there, which again is the Imhotepian theorem, but I don't. We'll do that another time. But again, it's the significance of the triangle with the 3 sides, and of course the 10 representing the Deca. So us coming into a 10-year, like I said, we're dealing with manifestation really, really heavy, but more importantly, all of the vibratory frequencies that make up manifestation. See, that's what the 10 represents, because it's the mother and the father, or really the father and the mother, respectively, when you're dealing with the 10, the 1 and the 0. Just like if you're dealing with Odu, and you would be dealing with, Ejiogbe, and you will be dealing with Oyeku Meiji, which again are considered the mother and the father of all Odus. Well, why is that? Because you utilize the formation of all light or all dark to create all of the other Odus. So you see, it's just like with the number 10, within the number 10, even in terms of shape, right? All numbers are a combination of straight line and curved line, right? So that gives you that same ideology of all things come from this. And our I Ching, you have also the hexagrams of heaven and earth. You have Kian and you have Kun, right? And Kian being the one, all light, representing heaven, and Kun being all feminine, representing the earth, right? But even still, with those 2 hexagrams, out of our 64 hexagrams, and our I Ching, or our I Ching, but those 2 are what make up all of the other ones. So like your 3rd hexagram is Zun, and Zun is a combination. That's when you get again to that number 3. But what's also significant when you're dealing with the 10, I think I was speaking earlier about the cardinal aspects of what one would call the archangelic forces, right? And there's many forces, all right? So, and again, out of Africa. That's really what we're dealing with this in terms of the origination of these sciences. But when you have so many different forces that you're dealing with, not just angels, you have the archangels, you have the different thrones of regality or royalty that represents your will. You have the cherubim. Many have heard of cherubim. You have the seraphim. So we're dealing with love and harmony in those aspects. So there are many, but ultimately when you get through the 9 different aspects, like the Elohim and the Archai and the Dynamis, and like I said, the cherubim, the seraphim, the thrones, and all the other ones, you get to the 10th, which is humanity, almost like Malkuth. representing, the love and the freedom and how we move forward based on the culmination of all of those different arc energies that have gone into create the 10. So it's just like 0 through 9 creates our 10, but more significant, like I said, you have those four cardinal energies that I spoke about earlier. Uriel, Mikael, Gabriel, and Mika. Yeah, did I say? Repeat myself. Mikael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel. I may have mixed up my order. I don't remember. But either way, I spoke about it earlier. Those four cardinal energies. Now, the significance of the 4 points, which we also have in E5 when we talk about the Isegun. Isegun is the vultures, right? Sitting at the 4 cardinal points of the planet, because those 4 cardinal points give you the equation of 10, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. If you add up 1, 2, 3, 4, you get 10. 1 plus 2 equals 3. 3 plus 3 equals 6. 6 plus 4 equals 10. You see? So you start to understand the cardinal values that go into comprising what we would call this year, right? This 10 year, right? Which really brings us back to Osset and Osir, because, respectively, they represent the number 10. As again, some would say Isis and Osiris, but Osset and Osir, or Osir and Osset, I should say, really represent that number 10 vibration. And I think I built on this. I did a show on 1010 Earth vibration, and I'm pretty sure, and I broke down the whole vibration of the closed eye versus the open eye, and what that means, in terms of your mythology. But 2016, as we know, which was a year of a lot of Gregorian year of a lot of death, like I mentioned earlier. If you look at the numbers, I'm only really kind of just dealing with math in this segment, if you notice. We have the summation to the number 9 when we're adding up the value. 2016, 2 plus 0 is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. 3 plus 6 is 9. Okay, so 2016 was a 9 year, and 9 year, for many of you who are dealing with the Yoruba pantheon, you know that's the number of Oya, Yansen, mother of 9, representing the 9 tributary rivers. Okay, that number 9 coming out of the Niger, right? Or you could pronounce that a different way if you're ready for that lesson. But in any event, so we know that Oya connects us also to Kali, right? Or the Kali Yuga era, which is the era of chaos, right? So one of the things that you understand, which especially with all the deaths, right? And Oya's relationship to death, of course. But with all of the deaths, you understand that all of the deaths that happened in 2016 are a part of the chaotic regeneration that's needed in order to bring harmony again. Whenever we're coming into a season of harmony, there always has to be chaos right before, because there has to be a dethroning. It's just like when countries fight for their independence, right? There's a fight. There has to be chaos, and then there has to be a dethroning of the current leadership. And then after that dethroning of the current leadership, then you're able to reestablish harmony in the form of the 10. Now, dealing with the winter vibration, it's just kind of interesting, because I just watched, it was last night, actually. Well, I guess, yeah, it was like 3 a.m. But I watched Civil War, one of the Avengers movie that came out in 2016, and it had the Winter Soldier in there, Bucky. But so it's kind of interesting that I'm speaking about this today. But everything relates to everything. I just realized as I was talking about the winter again, that I just saw the Winter Soldier. But man, I need to do a breakdown on that, because something's coming to me now as I'm even talking. But so yeah, there has to be a dethroning of rulership first. And that's one of the things that you understand about the Hermit card when you're dealing with your tarot, because the Hermit card, a lot of times we specify it, as the number 9, right? Even though the path is actually 20, but we'll specify it as a number 9. But the Hermit card relates itself to the value and the principle of Yod, Y-O-D. Okay, just Yod, like the number, like the letter Y in our Hebraic alphabet, and that actual path on the Kabbalistic tree of the Hermit or Yod is 10. So it connects us again to that 10 again, that 10 vibration. 10 Yod also being the 10th letter as well in Hebraic, and Yod is actually symbolized by an open hand. It means hand, but it means so much more than that. It's actually really deep because it represents microcosmic value, very similar to how that lantern underneath the hood of the Hermit represents a microcosmic value, but it's that microcosmic value that is existent in all other things. So for instance, when you're dealing with the Hebraic letter of Yod, its form and structure, it is said, for people who teach Hebrew, that you can't make any Hebraic letter in the Hebraic alphabet without including Yod. Okay, so there's a significance there. So and Yod is it represents fire. It's fire, but it's also the symbol of the phallus. It's a regeneration energy, but it is the small and micro. Well, I can't even say small. It is the infinite and usually undetectable, is a better way to put it, value that exists in all things that goes on later to create all things. That's why even with that number 10, you find on the apparent or the front side of the Kabbalistic tree of life, you have 10 Sephiroth. Okay, and Sephiroth is spears, right? So you have 10 spears. Right. So and it is said that the culmination of these 10 spheres brings about the fullness of the harmonizing divine. You see, so you see a lot of value again that we'll be experiencing this year with that 10 year, even going back to the idea of coming from the chaos of the 9, that Kali Yuga, like I said, which is really the era that we're still in now, that Kali Yuga era, but coming from that chaotic vibration and now starting to move into a harmonizing vibration when we're coming into the 10, right? Which is really still yet to happen, but we're having foreshadows of it, because even in your Hindu system, you have the 10 vibratory energies, or the 10, I call them the 10 archetypes of the 10 avatars. You have Krishna, you have Vamana, you have Varaha, Kurma, Buddha is one. You have Parashurama, Matsya. I think I said all of them. Rama, if I didn't say Rama earlier, I think I said Krishna. And then ultimately, the 10th avatar you'll have is Kalki. And Kalki is the one that begins the next age. Like we're in the Kali Yuga, and with Kalki, you come into the Satya Yuga, okay, which is at that age now where things are harmonized, because all of the wickedness and the confusion that was established in that 9 or in that early Kali Yuga era, that is now rebalanced and taken care of. You see, so it's important when you think about the significance of that 10, and of course, like I said, some of the avatars that are connected with the 10. Even when you're dealing with Sikhism, you also have the vibration of the 10 guru. I won't really get into all of that too much. If you're a Sikh, you should already know who the 10 guru are. But, I'm just kind of dealing with the vibration that we're in now, coming into another cycle. In fact, even, see, I'm showing you, like I said, I'm freestyling right now. I'm showing you how the thought process goes sometimes. As I was talking just now, I got a flash of Pat Sajak's goofy haircut, right? Just now as I was just talking. And I just got a flash of Pat Sajak, which reminds me, obviously that was my spirit saying, don't forget to mention Wheel of Fortune to everybody. So, right. So the Wheel of Fortune is a card that's in your tarot. And it's considered like the 10 position, that Wheel of Fortune. And what that represents is a new beginning, a harmonizing of things. Okay. So, again, there's so much mystic value. I could go on for hours, honestly, about that 1 and that 0 and what that represents, not only in your sacred geometric forms, but then even, like I said, taking it to the mystery and the value of Yod, which again, Yod, you'll also see whenever it's written, it's always suspended midair. It's usually off to the upper right, I believe, when it's written. But that kind of suspension in midair, it represents things that happen like on an atomic level, because it's not connected to the ground. Like, when you write a letter, you're usually writing a letter on a line, whether it's a K or a B or P or G, whatever, right? But if you think about like when you write an apostrophe, it's in the air. So Yod, a Yod, actually, is a better way to pronounce it, is similar to that in the fact that it's self-sustaining. It holds its own form. And that's kind of like Yod represents that singular dot of creation, which is a spark, which if I'm not mistaken, it was one of the Transformer movies where they dealt with that value of the spark. Okay, I don't want to mess it up and say the wrong movie and all that, but I know it was in there, and it was a transference of sparks and things like that in order to bring things to life, to bring things open. So like in the winter, you have this understanding that there's a reemergence of the spark in a sense, but that occurs through the overthrowing of the current order, which some have seen that as death, some have seen that as chaos. In more ancient times, that was represented by the conflict between Kronos and his father. His father was Anu, or what some would call Uranus, right? And, there was a time when he overthrew his father, very similar to Saturn. Kronos and Saturn are similar energies. And in fact, it is really, when you look at the hermit card in your tarot, when you're dealing with the Kabbalistic system, it is really that hermit that's really supposed to be a representation of Kronos, or again, like Saturn, or sometimes even like I'll remind you, like that's really also you're talking about Father Time in that sense, but you had the celebration like Saturnalia, right? Total chaos, December 25th, right? And what that really, it was supposed to be a celebration of, all of the solstice cycle, but all of the chaos that needed to happen in order for new growth to come in the coming season, right? And these were all a lot of the celebrations or the ideologies that we carry and we hold based on our quote unquote holidays are based on harvesting. A lot of them are harvest festivals, but as things change and as people evolved, a lot of times these earlier deities that were seen more as innocuous, but just served a certain purpose, were then turned into devils and demons in a sense. So it's like Kronos and Saturn just now became the gods of chaos, the gods of disorder, but it wasn't really about that. It was more so about the regenerative aspects that are needed in order for a new era to come forth. So again, when you look at all of the deaths of the 9 year of 2016, you see a lot of rulers being dethroned through death, right? So the greatest, Muhammad Ali, is no longer with us, because even with the Parkinson's and everything, right? Even with him growing into older age, he still was the greatest. I mean, even if he said it through feeble voice, he could still say, I'm the greatest. A lot of pictures you saw him still take, even in his older age, he playfully, like boxed a person, or he put his fist up to remind you, I'm the greatest. Okay, so now there's a changing of the guard that needs to happen. You look at even Prince, right? There's a change. I'm sure Stevie Wonder is like sweating in his boots right now, because he knows what's happening around him. He sees it, but you have all of these top energies, these throned energies that now have to be removed from the throne in order for the next era to come through. You see, because if you notice, for a long time, we haven't had any new emergences of anything. I've spoken about that for the longest, and it's not to say that we're going to have a new Muhammad Ali, or we're going to have a new Carrie Fisher, or we're going to have a new Prince, or a new whatever, based on so many have died this year that, I'd be here. That would be a whole show unto itself, just breaking that down. But it means that now a change of even how we perceive the top, or we perceive royalty, or we perceive the new kingdom is coming, you see. And that's why it's for those who are stuck in an antiquated past and unwilling to see the springtime that's emerging after this winter. Those are the ones that get mashed like the heavy, dense pieces of lead, right? Because lead again connects itself to the planet Saturn again, and Saturn is really far from the sun in turn. And again, what does the sun represent? Knowledge. It represents the sustenance of life, but the sun drives. It's the largest spark that drives the evolution forward. So when you have that Saturn, which represents satiation, which is a cognitive materialism, when you have that connection like that and you're unwilling to give it up, then that means your material hold, or your material hull, which is a better way to put it, has to be smashed and mashed to pieces in order for the divine spark to come forth that exists inside of it. Because this divine spark wants to be freed in order for it to go through the darkness and chaos and to become something else again. So that lead, or that Saturn, or satiated, satisfied value, represents the base matter that has to be destroyed in order for the vital energy, or the divine spark, to come forth. Now, in this year of the 10, that's what we're going through. We're seeing the harmonization of things. And for some, that base matter, or that heavy and dense base matter, or that chaos, is actually your subconscious mind. And that's what needs to be dealt with. That's what needs to be dived through in order for you to see your full potential. But when you're stuck in that, you're stuck in like a Saturn state. You're identifying yourself with your body. You're identifying yourself with time. And the reality is the manifestation of the one that comes from the combination of the 1 and 0 is a manifestation of greater time and space. There's a moving out of things. In fact, again, like I said, in that particular letter path, you have the hermit, which correlates itself to Yod. All right. And with Yod, you have the symbol of the hand. And the hand represents, you have an open hand in symbology, and you have a closed hand in symbology. And an open hand represents a microcosmic of what can become, of what can happen next. It's the essential power that can manifest things into the world. And then the closed hand represents unity. Now when things have come together. So there's a different power there. Okay. So, with that Yod vibration, you have an open hand reaching towards the heavens, or reaching upwards, which again is a reaching and pulling down of the divine spark of the supreme being, or the supreme intelligence, however you choose to call it. But it's also the divine spark that works within humanity. See, that's the value of the 1 and the 0. You see, the 1 is the pillar of humanity, because the 1 is definition. It has sought out for definition from its previous zero state, being all or nothing. The zero state is the feminine, it's the soul, which I don't want anything, I don't need anything because I'm self-contained. And the one says, I'm bored, I want it, let's do something that's inspired, let's do something that's joyful, let's experience pain, whatever it is. And it takes a journey into definition. Okay, definition is the manhood, it's the leadership, it's the one that says we're going to go in this direction. So then now the zero then comes after it again and adds on, the one adds on to that zero again. And what is that? That's like intercourse, taking the one or the staff and putting that into the zero, the oval of the womb, and creating what? Another definition after that. What does that other definition represent? Understanding, the child, a new era, someone else to sit on the throne and rule. Okay, so in many senses, that represents a secret initiation, the birthing of the next one. So you find that the combining and the joining of these different paths and these different movements, again, represent a great manifestation that is happening right now, for us all. And, again, it goes much deeper. Yod also deals with the humility that one needs to have, because again, it's actually the smallest letter in that Hebraic alphabet, so it does represent like the small things that are often ignored. And if you go back to last year's reading, it'll make even more sense to you. But it's that divine spark of the small things that go on later to touch and create and bring together all of the value of the word of the world, because again, you can't create any letter without the yod. You can't create anything without the divine spark that lantern represents. In that sense, it does represent completion. But even like when you look at in biblical myth, you have the 10 Commandments, which was commandments really represents translates into statements. So it's really supposed to be the 10 statements. But once you politicize stuff, it's better to say commandments. But you have that value of the 10 there. There were 10 generations that existed between Adam and Noah, right? And then you have 10 going from Noah to Abraham. So you see the things that happened before the deluge of the subconscious, which is the flood, and the things that happened after the deluge of the subconscious flood. So what does that flood represent? Chaos. It was the chaotic order of the 9. It was that journey of Oya to the realm of Olokun, the waters. We're now, okay, we got to bring this chaos. We got to turn everything over, but then we're going to start again. And until we get to another 10, then we're going to flip it over again to another 10. We're going to flip it over, and it kind of just keeps going and going and going in that sense. But one thing that you never want to ignore or miss is, again, the value of that procreative small spark that exists in all things. And I was going to get into the value of the actual path that the 10 takes along the Kabbalistic tree, but I think I've given enough in terms of that. Like I said, this is something we could just go on and go on and go on and go on. Even when you look at the hermit, like I said, that vibration that brings us through the winter, that hermit vibration, it's number being 9. That again represents a trinity of sorts, because you have you can factor it down to the number 3. So the number 9 is 3 trinities, 3 threes. So it takes you back to that idea again. But the robes and everything, it's the concealing of things. So that's why I spoke to you earlier about, even you may look at a thought and you crack your jokes and say everything, but the thought is a robe. Right? The prostitute, it's different between a prostitute and a whore, but a lot of times prostitution is the robing for the whore. The whore is the robing for the divine priestess. Not everyone has that spark. If everybody jumps up, that's because I talk about sluts, something different. But there's a robing that disguises a lot of times the divine spark. And it's not for everyone to see the lantern. Not everyone's going to see the lantern underneath the clothing, and the lantern is untouched because remember it represents that 6, right, which is the virgin or the Virgo, right? So it's that untouched aspect, that pure essence, that's going to be so important to respect in one another in this coming year, and so important to respect the unions that are necessary, the unions that need to be made amongst people in this coming year, and taking that a bit more serious. I know people laugh and joke about it. Like when I say, you need to get yourself a mate. A mate. This society has messed you up so much that it's insane to you to mate with someone. It's not insane if you have sex with someone or to even make babies and then take those babies and run off with them. That's completely normal. But to say, okay, no, we're going to create some type of team, some type of unit, that's so far from people's thinking. That's how far this society has taken people out, taking you out into really deep waters, and you don't even know how to get back. And of course, obviously, you guys know I'm not talking about picket fences and soccer practice every Saturday and Cub Scout den mother and cookies and I don't know, whatever it is the squares do. But I'm not really necessarily speaking about that, but definitely teaming up, recognizing that if you're a man, it's natural to be attracted to a woman. If you're a woman, it's natural to be attracted to a man. It's nothing to be ashamed about. You got to get out of that Catholic and Protestant mindset. Sometimes I hear people talk about, I had a guy I was talking to recently, he said something to that effect. He was like, yeah, I was at this meditation system, center. And, after we had finished meditating, his sister was getting closer to me, and every time I notice we go to meditate, she always brings her mat near me or asks if she could sit near me. And I'm like, man, I'm just like, nah, I'm just getting out of that situation. I'm just getting away from her. No reason as to why, but he's become so accustomed to avoiding connection and relating to complementary sex that it's almost become like a game of tag now almost, or manhunt, which is probably a better game to assimilate it to. So, but we're coming into that year. I'm telling you, those of you without that, because you've been getting picked off, but it's going to get even worse without that protection of a homestead. It's going to get even worse. And there's so many different ways to design your homestead. Believe you me, there's so many different ways. You don't even have to live together. You don't necessarily have to, especially, and it doesn't even make sense once you get past a certain age. Sometimes, again, like I said, you're mating with the wrong angles. The tree of correspondence is off. The warrior is not mating with the maiden. The warrior may be trying to mate with the crone, or the crone is mating with the father. And things are imbalanced and off in that sense. And you got to know when it's your time for certain things, and you have to be prepared to be good mates. I know a lot of times people will often say things like, well, where's all the good this and where's all the good that? And if you are good, you find a lot more of that than you can imagine. Most of the times your bad experiences that you're undergoing are a reflection of the bad experiences and chaos and confusion that exist inside you. But it's so hard for people to see that because so many go into situations already with the mindset that they are perfect. There's nothing wrong with them. There's nothing that needs to be repaired. And they start to list all of the great things about them. When you ask them, well, listen, I'm kind, I'm caring, I'm generous, I'm this, I got my own this, I got my own that, that. So once you create that bogus list, there's no way that you could think in your mind that maybe there's something missing in you. And this is why you're unable to really find quality, because you yourself are not quality. So I've been explaining that and sharing that, and I know it's an unpopular subject. It's an unpopular thing to have to say. It creates, people hate you afterwards. But don't say I didn't warn you. I warned you. Told you it's coming this year. And if you're unable to relate with people, you one of the people who want to stay in the perpetual place of the hermit, you got to understand that there's a season for that. And even in the winter season, when we come into that space and that vibration of the hermit, we acknowledge that seeds have been planted. Okay. So these are seeds that are germinating and gestating underneath the layer of snow. So there is still something that is expected to grow through the combination and the insemination of the masculine energy of the seed with the feminine energy of the earth. You see, so there's still some manifestation and things that are expected to come forth through the abundance of your own natural potential, So the combinations of manifestations are clear. It's in front of you. If you don't have a combination, you can't manifest anything. All right. Now, I've said that in so many different ways, so many different times. Those that are listening, and those that are not, you're going to keep trying to tap dance around it. So what if you do if you don't have this? And what if you do if you can't find it? Don't ask dumb questions like that anymore. Okay, some things just can't happen. It's like a man coming to me saying, well, what do you do if you don't have ovaries? Like, how can I, in a womb, how can I still have a baby? How can I? Ask me stupid things like that. There's no sideways around that. No, you're not going to be able to hold a baby within you. Now, I'm sure I'm positive there will be some medical advances at some point, if it hasn't already happened, to make that possible, but you're not going to be giving birth to an actual baby with a soul, so that becomes a different type of question, of course. But just remember that path of the 10, or again, even if we look at that path of Yod, it takes us between, it takes us to beauty. It takes us to Tifereth, representing that beauty aspect. And we have to go through the alchemical process of the 9, Saturn's process, the alchemical process of the 9, of the discord, the confusion, the dethroning, like when Zeus dethroned his father, and all these different deities, they always dethrone, and most of the time they dethrone and castrate. For some reason they leave that out a lot of the stories, I guess because they don't want you to relate it to the Ma'afa and all the lynchings that happen of indigenous men when they castrate them, and then they take those penises and they hold them in their Masonic lodges. But it's not just a dethroning, but typically it's a castrating that happens as well, which of course is supposed to symbolize the removal of the divine spark, the ability to carry on and to produce again, and to use that latent divine supreme power, or what they call the secret seed. When you get into Zoroastrianism, the secret seed, in order to continue forward and to move forward. So you see that in different mythology and things like that. But you study a mythology of a people, a lot of times it helps you to comprehend their intention towards you. So really tapping into world mythology is a very valuable thing to do. All right. So I want to remind you all that today we'll be having our men's call for those who are part of the Anu ministry and members of such. And I think in our next segment, I'll be running down the topics and stuff we'll be tapping into. And in this season now, I'm mainly speaking to Anu membership. All of you who are not a part of this ministry, you're welcome to listen and, just to tap in and everything like that. But this is a time now for me as a leader, really, to deal with those who are coming into this movement and want to be a part of something and want to manifest through the process of joining up. And that's where the seeds have to be planted right now, with the fertile ground. And I know that people like seeds, they like to play with them, put them in their back pocket, but they may not necessarily want to do something with them. And that's fine too, because you might do something with them later, or you might sell them to someone else, like Jack and the Beanstalk, and let somebody else do something with them, but it's important in this season. Like I told you, 2017 was going to be a much more raw year, and there's going to be so many changes coming forth. And one of the reasons, like, you know, there's a lot of times when I do things, I don't, like when we put the app out, and hopefully the iOS app will be pretty soon. But when we put the app out, I didn't say anything beforehand, because that's that aspect of the hand, or Yod, the hermit. It represents the hand that moves all creation, that manifests all things. But it's like it's a hidden hand, in a sense. You know, so the true movement comes through your manifestation, or the true evidence, not necessarily in your speaking of such. You know, and not to mean that speaking things into existence is not valuable. It is, but there's a hidden hand in all things. So trust when I say that we have things coming forth. There are big things in the work and small things in the work, you know, but all things that are being done are supporting this nation movement, or this nation building movement, if you want to call it that, or this nation organizing movement. And it's better to show you than to tell you in most instances. So, you know, I look forward to the men's phone call today at 1 p.m. And just know that we have the women's phone call every Monday as well. I think that's at 8 p.m. The sisters get together and they build. And, you know, I left a comment under the video, but I want to also express my pride and gratitude for the sisters who got on the phone call on the community show and kind of just spoke about some of the reasons why they need each other, and some of the ways that they express their need for one another, and the value that they see in each other. And like I said, I gave a special appreciation or thanks to Lola Parker for being a part of that, because she's new to this. And anytime you come into an environment or a conversation with a group of people who have already been talking, you know, and you're the new one in the room, I know it can be a little intimidating at times. And, you know, so for those who had the courage to get on that call and do that, you know, I certainly commend you. And as always, again, for the students who did the end of the month show, and all those who called in, I thank you for that. And you remember that all of you are invited to be a part of that phone call, all of you. And I know I say that all the time, but trust, I'm going to stop saying it soon. Okay? So there's a time for things, and then there's a time when there are not things. So, you know, I only repeat them because I know that people come into these shows all at different moments. So they may not have heard it before, and I don't have regular commercials and stuff that I play. Sometimes I do. I remember to play them. Sometimes I forget. But so yeah, I just wanted to put that out there for those who participated. Thank you. It's always good, and people do always comment that they like to hear the students' perspective. It really helps them out a lot. So I'm thankful. You know, if you want something and you want this thing to continue, and you want to be a part of all the beautiful things that we're doing, you know, the retreats and the land buys and the community building and the educational components, the rites of passage, the music ministry that we're developing, and so many different things, you have to help sustain it. Okay, that's how this works. This is not just, I know, and I do appreciate every time we feel, oh, thank you, brother. Thank you so much, Chief Yuya, for what you do. And that's cool. I do appreciate it. But join in. You know, don't think that I get off on just being a philanthropist. You know, there's other things that I want to do with my life, too. And I look forward to my dethroning. I'm going to let anybody castrate me now. That's not going to happen. But I definitely look forward to that time when the younger bulls step forward and say, all right, Chief, all right. You know, I challenge you. You know, I challenge you to a death match, and whoever wins takes over. I'm cool. Just keep it going. I don't care, you know. So yeah, so all of these teachings in the work is so that you all will have something that sustains you. That's what this is really about, that you will have something that sustains you, something that you can give your children, something that's sane. When you're coming into indigenous spirituality, you don't have to be like so many who have so many horror stories, from getting ripped off, getting raped on different levels, just to getting misled and confused and all of the other nonsense that is really unnecessary in this day and time. But in order for you to have it, you got to contribute to it. You really have to contribute to it. And again, like I always say, I don't mind that the groups are very small. If I see that 10 people consistently contribute, believe me, I will shrink this whole thing down to service just 10 people. That's what I will do. Because I really don't care about the masses. If I cared about the masses, I would do more inflammatory shows. I would do more shows on homosexuality and why black women are no good, and why black men are no good, and why swirling is bad, and why swirling is good, and why GMO food. Well, nobody want to hear about that, but maybe something else. But I would come up with, I don't know how to do that. If I wanted to be a show host or whatever, or a YouTube presenter, there's ways to bring them in, but I'm more interested in quality over clutter. Okay, and a lot of times when you have a lot of clutter in your congregation or within your listening audience, you end up spending a lot of time diffusing situations and deflecting harm that will come toward you from people who are not even building with you, but they're just dead set on being disruptive. You see. But all right, that has been our Chief Speaks for this Sunday, 11/2017. All right. And, we'll get into what we're going to be doing for the year, because it's going to be changing. I'm actually going to be working by season this year. So last year, Gregorian 2016, I gave you a layout for the actual whole 2016 calendar. And this time we're going to be working with the energies of the actual season. All right. So now you already know that the winter season is the vibration for clear thinking. It's when Yuya or Rael, instills the ether of thought and discernment within us in a very strong way. We can see things in a way that we haven't before. So we'll be dealing with more the aspects of clear thinking and discernment, and tapping into that Obatala, vibration and Dambala a bit more in this season. All right. So until such time, this is Chief Yuya. Give thanks, and everybody get together. Join up. Team up. Men, snatch up the women. Women, snatch up the men. And, go make some babies. Produce. This is the season for it. All right. Until such time, everyone.